Hi, 3 and 4-year-old leaders. We're preparing for September 1st in our series called Back to Basics. In this series, we've looked at Solomon and how God prepared Solomon, David's son, to be king of Israel after David. When Solomon became king, he was given the chance to ask God for anything, and he asked for wisdom. And because he asked for wisdom, he was given more than just wisdom. And the week after that, we looked at how Solomon used what he learned from God and wrote 3 significant books, or big portions of those books for the Bible. The book of Proverbs is mostly written by Solomon. Ecclesiastes is written by Solomon, and Song of Solomon is written by Solomon as well. And in all 3 of those books, we see, these are called the wisdom books, and we see how God used the wisdom that he gave to Solomon to help us understand how we can have relationship with each other, have relationship with God. And ultimately in the Song of Solomon, we get to see God's picture of what a godly marriage looks like. Last week, we looked at how God used Solomon to build his temple as a reminder that God is with us temporarily. He was temporarily with the Israelite people through the temple until Jesus was coming. Remember, God had been preparing the Israelites the entire time to tell them, you can have an earthly king, but when you have an earthly king, there's going to be consequences. And we're going to see that happen in our story today called the Divided Kingdom. And the consequence came because Solomon had many wives, and all of those wives came from different tribes and different people groups. And when they bring in their different people groups, they bring in their different gods. And they all were trying to persuade Solomon that their God is the God. Although Solomon knew who the one true God was, he was persuaded to make sacrifices to other gods. He was persuaded to do practices in other religions that didn't help point to the one true God. And the consequence of following an earthly king is there are times where you have to work harder, where you have to be taxed and give up things to make the kingdom work. And so what God was preparing them for is the perfect king, Jesus, who was going to come in man form as God to help us all know that we needed that Savior to save us from our separation with God. And because Jesus came to save us from that separation of God, then he was sent a helper to dwell within us when we believe in Jesus. So what God does is divide the kingdom. He, as a consequence to Solomon for following other gods, he makes a northern kingdom, and then in the northern kingdom, he separates Solomon's son Rehoboam to be a part of the northern kingdom. And in the southern kingdom, those were the tribes of Judah. And there were 10 tribes of Judah and 2 tribes of Rehoboam that were separated. And we're going to see the consequences of that separation throughout the rest of time. In fact, if you go to that land now, you can see it. You can see the separation and the differences of religion and all of the things that converge in that one area as a reminder of how we all need the one true God, the one Savior. All right, so in your small group lessons today, you have your social activity called Pay Attention. In this social activity, you remember these games are not necessarily to point to a Bible story. They may help us prepare to be able to listen better, but more than anything, they're to help us build a connection with kids within your small group time so that you have the chance to share bigger things with them. When kids begin to trust us, then we have little bits of equity to be able to build relationships with them in a different way so that we can share big truths and they can begin to ask big questions. So that is your social activity. The instructions are there on your paper, pretty easy. If you want to change it up a little bit and let the kids be the leader of the game, you're welcome to do that as well. Then during your small group time, you have a bag full of straws and a bag or two full of pom-poms, and you'll have 2 of one color and 10 of another, and a roll of masking tape. You're going to take the tape and use the tape to make a mark on the table to designate a separation on the table. I encourage you to do this on the table or on like a tile floor so that pom-poms don't stick to the carpet. So what you're going to do is dump out the pom-poms on the table and give each kid a straw, and they're going to use their straws to try to move the pom-poms to one side. So because of the colors, you will separate them by colors. The 2 yellow ones go on one side and the 10 blue ones go on another side. So maybe you want to give each kid in your group a color that they are supposed to move, color pom-pom they're supposed to move. Or in some of the groups, you'll have multiple bags of pom-poms. So if you want to give each small group, like break them into like 4 or 5 kids or 3 or 4 kids each, and give each little table their chance to do this activity together, they can do it that way. You don't have to do everybody together is what I'm trying to say. So this is really just to help them see what division looks like and how we can divide things. And then as you're finishing up, you can remind them that God knows everything. That King Solomon's sin split his kingdom, but God kept his promise to David's family. People from David's family were kings of Judah. All right. You also have coloring pages if you'd like to use them with your kiddos later. And remember, the coloring pages have great information for parents to know what we're teaching and why we're teaching them. Then your memory verse is missing. Oh, here it is. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James 1:5. Now, I don't have actions for you to do during this memory verse, but maybe you want to use different kinds of voices. You could say it really soft, or you could say it really, really loud, or you could say it really, really high, or use your Donald Duck voice, or any other voices that you are good at doing or pretending to do. And you can pray and encourage your kids that because of Jesus, we have the chance to have a different kind of relationship with God than the Israelites had. That we can have God with us all of the time, that we don't have to have the physical reminder of the temple, that we don't have to do the sacrifices, and that we need that Savior Jesus. Thanks for pointing kids to Jesus. I'll see you again soon.